I think Mueller is a true never-Trumper. He's somebody that dislikes Donald Trump.
As you saw in Georgia, where the district attorney is totally compromised, the case has to be dropped.
We have an attorney general in New York. She's grossly incompetent. She's an evil person. She's a terrible, terrible attorney general.
The American people have been besieged with lies from the partisan witch hunt known as the Unselect Committee on January 6th.
As the rest of us breathe, Donald Trump attacks anyone investigating him. He has always done it, aggressively pursued anyone seeking to hold him accountable under the rule of law that the rest of us live under, whether it's a special counsel, a district attorney, congressional panels. And the criminal case currently underway here in Manhattan is no exception. But what sets this trial and this moment apart is that it may finally be the moment when Trump does so much that is so egregious, so detrimental to the rule of law and the human beings involved in this case, the jurors, the witnesses, that he may actually face a consequence for those smears. Last week, Donald Trump was charged $9,000 for violating the gag order placed on him. That's $1,000 for each of the 9 violations. Didn't sound like a lot of money, but it was important. Turns out, according to the judge in this trial, Judge Juan Merchan, those financial penalties proved to him that they were not adequate. They did not deter him. So today's court session, first thing this morning, began with a forceful message from the judge, Judge Merchan, who, in addition to charging Trump criminally with another contempt of his gag order, fined him another $1,000 fine for an attack he made against the jury. The judge also said he may be left with no other choice but to jail the ex-president. The judge, addressing Donald Trump directly, said this, quote, "It appears that the $1,000 fines are not serving as a deterrent. Therefore, going forward, this court will have to consider a jail sanction if recommended. Mr. Trump, it is important to understand that the last thing I want to do is put you in jail. You are the former president of the United States and possibly the next president as well. There are many reasons why incarceration is truly a last resort for me. To take that step would be disruptive to these proceedings, which I imagine you want to end as quickly as possible. The magnitude of such a decision is not one-sided. But at the end of the day, I have a job to do, and part of that job is to protect the dignity of the judicial system and compel respect." A real moment from the judge today that left open the prospect of potential jail time for the ex-president. It now hangs over him in a more serious way than at any other point in his life. While today in court, we heard Trump and current Trump org employees describe in detail the monthly payments made to Michael Cohen in 2017 that were set up to hide the fact that they were reimbursements for the $130,000 hush money payment made to porn star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election. Testimony that at times seemed dense and a bit tedious, but got to the real heart of the case, including with documents, and that's payments to Trump's former fixer. It's where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Outside the courthouse, Washington Post justice reporter and co-author of the Trump Trials newsletter, which I read every day. It's fantastic. Devlin Barrett is here with me at the table. Former U.S. Attorney and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman's here, and the host of the On Brand podcast, Donnie Deutsch, is here. I want to dive back into the testimony, but I have to start with jail. Trump, who didn't go to a memorial for United States veterans of World War I, I think, and II in France because it was raining and his hair would get messed up. For a million reasons, petty, shallow, and primal, Trump does not want to go to jail.
Yeah, despite his references to Nelson Mandela, we will not see him doing a 24-hour Nelson Mandela. Look, if you really think through, and I remember interviewing the Wolf of Wall Street, and he told me what is literally going through the process, what it's like, and what they examine and how they do things. And Donald Trump, and we were talking off camera, and you brought up the point in the last segment that he won't eat food when he goes on foreign territory.
Right.
You have to use the bathroom. His hair, his makeup, his skin, like he will be pulled apart. He doesn't have the metal to do it. So anybody that's out there saying, "Oh, it's a great moment for him," and this is not a mugshot, this is jail. And Donald Trump is terrified. You've got to believe just by his his issues with odors and smells and you know, fear of disease. This guy does not want to spend 30. Nobody does, but particularly this guy.
You were in court today. What was this moment like?
It's the sentence we've been waiting for over a year. There's been a lot of tongue wagging from different judges, usually to the attorneys. Not only did he put it out there, we're now at the line, but he turned, as you said, and I've never seen this before, to Trump directly, and he lectured him. I don't want to do it, but if you force me to, I'm going to have to. It was slightly breathtaking, I would say, because of the direct, we are here. Here's the line. That's it.
Devlin, you've covered Trump's brushes with legal accountability for as long as I've had a show on the air here. It's never come to this, right? He's never actually been on trial. A jury's never been selected to decide. Again, none of us will have any say in whether there will be a consequence for his alleged criminality. Just the jury will. But it has never come to this point where a judge looked him in the eye and said, next stop, jail.
That's right. And, you know, there was a moment similar to this a little bit in the E. Jean Carroll trial, but that's a civil matter. And as much as the judge and he chirped at each other a little bit, there really isn't a threat of incarceration in a civil case the way there is in a criminal case. And there is a game of chicken going on here. And I don't think it's like an emotional game of chicken. I think it's a very tactical, strategic game of chicken between these two sides as Trump tries to see what he can get away with. And the judge keeps trying to draw a line and say no further than this.
Devlin, do you think it adds up to any calculation that he has to testify? I mean, he's so desperate to tell his story. I remember you had great reporting while Mueller existed those 23 months, and at least once every 10 days he tweeted out, I'm dying to talk to Mueller. I'm dying to tell my story. I mean, do you think this factors in at all to his team's calculation about whether or not he takes a stand in his own defense?
I think it's a factor, but I don't think it's going to be a deciding factor because the things that will decide that, it's such a high-stakes gamble for any defendant to take the stand. It's particularly a high-stakes gamble for this defendant to take the stand in this case. So I think Trump is going to play it coy and sort of dangle the possibility right up to the very end. But really, the stakes are so high. I have to think his lawyers are going to spend a lot of time and energy talking him into a place where they hope he gets to not testify. I don't think any defense lawyer wants that in this situation.
You can almost see in the coverage, Donnie, as it always does, sort of the threads and the bonds between him and his legal team running a little thin. You can see it in the rebukes. I don't know much about Mr. Blanche, but he's not someone that was known to be rebuked by judges in front of court rooms and juries before. He was during jury selection. I mean, I think what Devlin's saying is absolutely right. But at the end of the day, Trump seems to always believe he's his own best lawyer.
Yeah, look, we've documented you don't touch Trump without coming away with a stink. And, you know, obviously this is a very lawyer with a very good reputation. You know, I want to just go back to the gag order. And the judge has kind of I don't want to say put himself in a corner. The judge has really kind of put it on the line. And Harry,
he drew a line, yeah.
He really, like, where if Trump keeps going, the judge literally has no choice for his own credibility. And I really believe, I'm not a lawyer, but just human behavior.
100%.
Well, and Michael Cohen is what remains. So the idea that Trump isn't going to be his worst, like, I feel like no one has seen anything yet. I mean, the fact that Cohen is coming, Stormy, a lot of the witnesses have been people who remain loyal and admiring of Donald Trump. Hope Hicks said he was the best messenger. These two today, I believe, have lawyers paid for by the Trump org. I mean, Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen would not be those kinds of witnesses.
No, and he's going to be fit to be tied. But Merchan he was calm about it, but he was entirely credible. We are at an end here. And it's a sensible calculation on his part because he doesn't want to keep doing these, you know, give Trump a little rope, he'll take it, a little rope, he'll take it. So he's saying, we are here. I don't want to do it, but really we're here. And I 100% agree with Don. He cannot now just ignore the next one. His credibility and the system's on the line.
It could happen while we're on the air.
That's right.
It's 5:10. It could happen in the next 15 minutes. Then what happens?
Yeah, it's been, well, first of all, I do want to say on the whole don't eat his own food, et cetera, there's a chance of the very first incarceration being like a couple hours in the holding cell in the back. But then he's in the exact same position.
You're saying basically you could hold it in fact.
Something like that. But then he's in the same position, which is impossible. My best guess, he was chastened, he was sullen. I don't think he's going to want to do it. And the issue is really, can he stop himself? Will the sort of Tourette's aspect of Trump, especially with Cohen testifying, just keep him from being able to muzzle it? I don't think he wants to do it.
Cohen's going to really get him going. I think more than Stormy
He always does.
Oh, my God.
Something about those two guys. And look, Cohen, everybody keeps saying, Cohen, his credibility, he will be good. He can be very charming when he wants to be. He really, really can.
And the jury has heard him denigrated every single day that there's
so
been
the bar
testimony.
is down over here.
Correct.
And I think Michael, I'm not just saying this because he's a friend of mine, I think he's going to be in a really comfortable position. And I think that the more they cross him, I think he's got the truth on his side. And, as any lawyer will tell you, once you have the truth, there's just not much you have to worry about and deal with.
Well,
He'll be worried, but they've seen him 25 times.
Right.
He'll be scripted to the comma. There is still one little thing that I know you were talking before, that everything's all stitched up. I think today obliterated the idea that he worked on his own. But that conversation among Trump, Weisselberg, and him, he's going to be the guy who has to testify about it, and they'll come after him on it.